Something you might not know about me unless you regularly make a habit of looking past me to the Marvel vs. Capcom arcade machine that I have in my background is the fact that I'm actually a huge fan of fighting games. Not so much because I'm any good at them, in fact I'm downright awful at them, but more so for the aesthetic and the character designs. So I have been super excited seeing all the trailers coming out for Street Fighter 6, and got even more excited to work with the characters when the topic won in a poll that I recently put out to my audience. So I figured I'd pair some of the characters from the new Street Fighter game with another topic that I'm very excited about coming this year, which is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Today I'm gonna redesign and rewrite Street Fighter 6 characters to turn them into Spider-People versions of themselves. Let's get into it, shall we? Let's go! Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show. Alright people, let's do this one last time. Or maybe 4 more times. Across the Spider-Verse, there are thousands, millions, who knows how many people with web-slinging abilities who take on the name Spider-Man. Or Spider-Woman. Or Ghost Spider, there's even a Spider-Monkey, but the point is, Spider-People are all over the place. None of them can really call themselves the one and only Spider-Man. But that doesn't make them any less great. One of the many is Juri Han. She was raised by 2 loving parents who had a ton of cash as a result of her dad being a pretty successful lawyer. But money doesn't help you much when you get on the wrong side of someone like Bison Fisk and his shadow hands. On the outside, Bison appeared to be an upstanding businessman, but for most people in the know, he was regarded as the guy behind the most dangerous criminal organization on the planet, dealing biochemical drugs, weapons, and whatever shady stuff they could make a significant profit off of. Juri's dad was in charge of prosecuting Fisk, and while most lawyers to go after the big man had never been able to wrangle much evidence against him, Juri's dad was a significantly better lawyer than any of them, which didn't end up turning out too well for the guy. Before the case could go to court, Bison had Juri and her parents kidnapped and threatened to kill them all if her dad didn't intentionally flub the case. But Juri's dad was a proud man. Maybe a bit too proud. He refused and Bison had both Juri's parents killed then and there, but Juri ran away, though getting her left eye badly injured in the escape, meaning she'd end up with an eye patch for the rest of her young life. She tried to go to the police and tell them what happened, but like many authority figures in the city, they were already on Fisk's payroll and just told her to scram. Juri's outlook on the world changed quickly over the following months. The new lawyer put against Fisk was either a moron or had agreed to be paid off because Bison walked free. Juri became angry and bitter, which fair enough considering the scenario, and she channeled all of that fury into training. She started taking classes on Taekwondo at Fogwell's gym in Hell's Kitchen, and over the next 10 years became the best fighter that gym had ever seen. And yes, I am including Matt Murdock in that. Even Daredevil would have a hard time taking down Juri if she got her feet swinging for his head. Though come to think of it, a weird number of dudes in that gym seemed pretty content to let Juri step all over them. Anyway, all the while, Juri wanted revenge on Bison, but instead of going after him and his shadow hands head on, she started running crime jobs herself to get their attention. Soon enough, Fisk had some of his guys offer her a position with them. She worked her way up in their own ranks until they trusted her enough to offer her an experimental bio-enhancement. Shady bunch of folks, untested weapon, what could go wrong, right? I mean, nothing did go wrong for her, but I personally would not have let them replace my own eye with something they called the Arachnid Engine, which is exactly what she let them do to her. With this engine installed in her body, she was altered on a genetic level to give her spider-like powers. She could cling to walls, leap great distances, and even shoot green sticky webs from her fingers. That, paired with her incredible fighting skills, made her a force to be reckoned with. With that upgrade in, she started in on her real mission, slowly and quietly picking off members of Fisk's ranks so she could eventually get to Bison himself. But along the way, she was still doing jobs for the guy, because hey, any chance to beat someone up was still a chance to let out some of her pent-up rage, no matter who was benefiting from it. Jumping over to another universe, we've got a Spider-Girl named Kimberly Jackson. She came around after another Spider-Man had already been stomping out crime's lights for a few years in her world, a dude named Guy Parker. He had his whole own spider life that Kimberly always admired from a distance. In fact, she went beyond admiring to, well, honestly sorta invasion of privacy territory. See, she was a child prodigy, a next-level genius who was already in and out of college by the time she was 18. With a brain like that, and access to the internet, it wasn't too hard for her to figure out Spider-Man's identity, and even figure out that he'd gotten his powers by being bitten by a radioactive spider when he lived in Japan as a kid. The spider had been made by a man named Ziku Osborne, who ran a massive company that did, I don't know, lots of stuff. It's just one of those businesses that has a ton of money and you look at them from afar like, they probably just do whatever the plot needs, right? Anyway, with her big brainy brain, Kimberly was able to recreate the experiments that made the bug that bit her world Spider-Man just so she could let it bite her, then squish the thing so it wouldn't get to anyone else. It worked just as she hoped. She got all the usual spider powers, but to stand out, gave herself a way more flashy and colorful Spidey suit that shot thicker, colorful webbing. See, along with being a genius, she was also an artist with a passion for graffiti, so made sure her webs doubled as a way to let out her artistic side, tagging spiders at every spot she stopped a crime. Of course, for her first save, she didn't want to work alone. She waited till Spidey was on the breaking news out in some big rescue across the city and swung out to give him a hand. Guy appreciated the help, sorta, but Kimberly was insisting on being his trainee, and he wasn't really into it. Still, she persisted, showing up every time he was on a job, and eventually he just started showing her the ropes as a way to eventually get her off his back. Through working with him, she even got a chance to meet and fight alongside the Avengers, the X-Men, the Defenders. In her time working alongside detective and superhero Chun-Li Jones, Kimberly would eventually come to praise her as much as Spider-Man, and would start trying to run around with Jones. I guess Kimberly was a big fan of working with people who weren't super interested in working with her, though Jones came to like Kimberly more than most people. Not that that's saying much, Chun-Li Jones isn't exactly the most social person around. Still, through Kimberly's outrageous smarts, determination, and work ethic, she eventually became a world-class superhero as her dimension's second Spider-Person, but first and only Spider-Girl. Now, it's probably pretty shocking at this point that we haven't had a Spider-Man story starting with a certain uncle dying, so let's get to one of those now, huh? Luke Sullivan was being raised by his loving Uncle Ben, but while they were out together having an innocent day at a shopping mall, his uncle spotted an explosive. Ben made Luke run as he did his best to warn others to get away. His uncle saved a lot of lives that day, but didn't escape himself. Turned out the terrorist group Hydra had planted the bomb, and little did they know they'd just jump-started the origin for someone who would become some major dirt in their eyes one day. That event set Luke on a path to do whatever he could to take out groups like Hydra, and any other that threatened innocent lives on American soil, or anywhere else he could protect. He got himself in good enough shape physically and mentally to join the military. He became one of the most skilled operatives any of his commanding officers had ever seen, and he did a lot of good work for them, but still wasn't feeling fully satisfied. He liked the people he worked with and respected the job, but he wasn't getting to go up against the biggest guns that groups like Hydra had. In the middle of his quarter-life crisis, he met the great Captain America, who he even got a chance to spar with and held his own against pretty well considering he was fighting a literal super soldier. Afterwards, he got to confide in Cap his hesitancy about continuing in the military, and while he assumed Cap would tell him to just keep at it, he instead said Luke was a skilled fighter who did have other options if he really wanted to help take down groups like Hydra. Cap gave him the contact information for Maria Hill, and within a month, Luke had transferred to working with S.H.I.E.L.D., running ops against full-fledged Hydra bases. It was working fairly well for him, but things still felt a bit off. He thought it might be that he wanted the power to do even more. He now looked up to Cap and started inquiring if S.H.I.E.L.D. had anything like the super soldier serum that they were working on now. He got no's at every turn, but knew an organization like S.H.I.E.L.D. had its own secrets. He dug deeper than he probably should have, and found there was a S.H.I.E.L.D. facility that had tons of trials in the works to make new versions of the serum that had given Cap his powers back in World War II. Eventually, he managed to get one-on-one with S.H.I.E.L.D.'s head operator himself, Nick Fury, and personally requested to be the test subject for one of these experiments. Fury respected the kid's initiative, and the gall it took to look into S.H.I.E.L.D. secrets just to admit it and ask for them to be used on him. The closest they'd gotten to replicating the super soldier serum was through genetically altering a spider to produce venom that would enhance someone's speed and strength. They tested it out on him, and it worked. And on top of those powers, he got the ability to cling to walls and spider sense. To add to that even more, he was given S.H.I.E.L.D.-made web shooters, and at that point, he probably could have taken on Cap easily in a fight if they ever sparred again. It was even better than the kid could have hoped for. But eventually he found that using these powers under S.H.I.E.L.D.'s watch was too restrictive for him. Turned out his problem all along was really that he just wasn't a huge fan of having a boss. A few years later, he officially left and became a free agent, going after groups like Hydra on his own and making a living working as a martial arts instructor. He'd spend his days off either picking fights with Hydra, or just playing video games and eating ridiculous amounts of food that his body could easily burn through thanks to his super metabolism. This finally felt like the life he was supposed to be living, fighting the good fight, training others to be stronger and do good themselves, all while getting some time to chill out and just enjoy himself. Let's wrap these stories up today with the first French spider person I ever came across. She just goes by Manon. Got the Adele or Cher or Banksy one name thing going for her. Calling her an overachiever would be an insult. This lady wanted to be the best at everything she did. By the time she was an adult, she was already considered the world's greatest fashion designer, supermodel, dancer, and even won some of the world's highest ranked judo tournaments. She was an idealist, and her biggest obsession in life wasn't any one of those things I just mentioned, it was just straight up self-improvement. If she wasn't actively becoming better at multiple things every single day, she wasn't living. Eventually, she turned her sights to the world of superheroes. She saw plenty of people doing good, but also tons of villains still stomping around, getting by the world's heroes. With the crazy amount of money she'd made through all her other ventures, she was able to commission her own team of scientists to develop a way to give her superpowers. Though, as they worked, she'd constantly be learning from them until it got to a point where she was running a lot of the experiments herself. She had them start down a path looking into spiders specifically, and any potential through them. They'd been a brief obsession of hers when she started developing outfits to wear on the runway from spider silk, and realized what a durable and versatile material it was, then learning what remarkable creatures spiders were. Eventually, this led her and her team to discovering that they could genetically alter a spider that could bite a human to give them the ability to produce thicker, even more durable spider silk themselves. It was a win-win. She could use the spider silk for designing her clothing and get superpowers. After ample tests, they finally had the spider bite Manon, on the bottom of her foot in course, just in case any scar was left as a result. Couldn't risk the world's greatest supermodel getting a blemish where people could see it. She then indeed got the ability to shoot biowebs herself, along with, all the usual spider person powers. Now she gives a lot of the world's best superheroes a run for their money. She's even had public offers from the Avengers to join their ranks, but has refused, preferring to be a free agent. Plus, Tony Stark had tried hitting on her at parties one too many times even before she had her powers. Beyond rejecting the Avengers, she even publicly claimed that she'd single-handedly take down more villains than their entire team. It was a bold proclamation, but to be honest, I don't even really doubt she'll be able to do it. When Manon sets her mind to a task, she never really fails to achieve it. This was particularly fun because I tend to determine how good I'm getting at dynamic poses by drawing Spider-Man style characters. So I gotta say, I'm pretty happy with where I've gotten to skill set wise in that regard. I'd also love more suggestions for what else I could do with Street Fighter characters, maybe even Street Fighter 6 specifically, because there'll be more trailers coming out and new characters announced, so, could be cool to work with them. If you are new to the channel, you might want to check out my Marvel Combat episodes. They're a little bit on the older side now, but I think they still hold up pretty well. But besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note.
And the thought I want to leave people with today is a quote from a man named Inky Johnson, who's got a fascinating and harrowing life story. If you've never heard it before, I'd recommend looking into him. He's very inspirational. And he says in regards to life that you should play the hand you're dealt as if it's the one you always wanted. We're all going to have different levels of challenges in life, but if you go through them as if they're something you asked for, then it makes it easier for you to get through them and then help other people get through similar kinds of challenges. I hope that's inspiring to someone out there. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Friday.